jamming it with Paint Your Body. Alright, so we're going to be wet sanding the defects out of clear coat, and I'm going to polish the wet sand scratch marks out with Menzerna compound, followed up by the Menzerna polish or swirl remover. I love the Menzerna products. Beforehand I was using, well, this is going back almost about a year now. Before using Menzerna, before even trying it, I was hooked on the Presta buffing compound and polish, the whole setup with the Presta, which I still think is a great system. And, you know, if I had to use it, I would use it. It's no big deal. But since trying the Menzerna compound and the polish, I've never gone back. And I love this stuff. And if you give it a shot or you're looking to switch to another product, whatever, I definitely recommend the Menzerna. It's excellent. Polishes really quick, really well, and leaves it with a really nice shine. So, yeah, give it a shot. I really like it. I enjoy it, and it makes my work easier. So on this, I believe I painted this. Well, this is a 2019 Toyota Highlander. I painted, there was a small repair on the fender, a small dent on the body line. That got repaired, put in primer. You know, then prepped and painted, and I painted this the day before I did this video. So the clear, it got baked in the booth, and then it got to sit for about 24 hours at least before I started to do this. So it's fresh clear, but it's not straight out of the booth or same day fresh. So I'm not quite you know, as cautious wet sanding and polishing as if it were, you know, really fresh. But, you know, you still got to be mindful of all your edges and body lines. But I wanted to make this video. This fender came out so dirty, I don't even know what happened. I don't know, a dust storm, something, I don't know. But I figured, hey, you know what, why not make a video, show how I take out the dust nibs or defects real quick, and just give a quick demo on buffing and polishing this up afterwards. Kind of like the steps or what would happen even on a smaller scale or a larger scale, basically, I guess. So I got my wet sand bucket with some fresh water in it. You don't want to use dirty water or something that you prepped with and then, you know, just take that and go straight to trying to sand out your defects. So I grabbed 2000 grit wet sandpaper. I got the dual density sanding block. It's one of the sanding blocks with the soft side and the harder side if you flip it over, so it's a black and gray block. I really like those. I think a lot of people like those for denibbing or prepping. They work really well. But anyway, so I located the dust nibs, the defects, wet sanded those with the 2000 grit, and follow up by wiping off any of the water or excess left over. You take a look at it. You know, you want to sand it until you don't see the defect anymore. So some spots you might have to sand a little bit more aggressively than others. But basically, you find your spot, you sand it quickly, take a look at it. As soon as it's not there anymore, you move on and look for any other spots that you need to take out. So after that's done, whether it's one dust nib or in this case, I don't know, 6, 7, whatever it is, you continue on until that's done. Once you're done with that step, wipe the panel off quick, get your compound, and you can put it on all the spots at once, however you want to do it. Since this is just a small area to work, I just put the compound on all the spots right away. It's whatever, it doesn't matter. So now I'm using a #1 wool compounding pad with the Menzerna 400 to compound out these marks. It works really well. 1 or 2 coats quick, and just keep working it in there until you get it out. This is also black. Everybody, oh, you know, black, it's so hard. It's really not hard. You just got to be more careful with swirl marks and whatnot. Buffing black's not that big of a deal. It's not. It'd be easier if it were white because you don't have to follow it up with polish or a foam pad and some swirl remover. But either way, it's really not difficult as long as you can pay attention and you can see and catch things with your eye, you know, so you avoid having to re-go back over it, or, you know, any other steps that you might have to take that you could just knock out right away. And another thing I want to point out, this had the trim and everything put back on. Usually you do your buffing before that, but it doesn't always happen like that. So either way, I put this small piece of masking paper over the black trim, and you know, that's really important. If you get compound all over trim, especially on a new car or you know, even an old car, it's going to show. It looks really, really nasty. And it looks like you don't know what you're doing. And then to try to clean that stuff off afterwards, it's just a pain, and it takes too much time. It's just a waste of time and effort. So just quick, put some tape over the area, or, you know, a small piece of masking paper or whatever, to keep that covered and protected. And then when you're done, just take it off, throw it in the garbage, and you have nothing else to worry about. You're all set. So I guess a couple tips to give if you're new to buffing, or you haven't buffed at all, or you just want a perspective from somebody else. You know, some of the big things are, you know, when you're buffing, I think I said it a little earlier, you always want to avoid your edges and your body lines. Those are the first places or areas that you're going to burn through, or the buffing wheel is going to catch on it. Something. So, you know, and there's times where you're going to have to buff over an edge or near a body line. So in that case, you're going to want the buffing wheel, it turns in a clockwise motion. So you're going to want the wheel spinning off the edge instead of spinning into the edge. That way you're never going to have it get caught on the edge and pull the buffer or burn the edge. You know, that's just kind of a quick pointer. Do that. Like I said, watch your edges. Tape off any trim, you know, anything like that. You know, if you have a good compound and, you know, good materials and products that you're using, you want to make sure you have a good buffing pad. You don't want it all worn out with the red strings or the indicator strings showing that it's time to get a new one. You want to make sure your products and your materials are in good shape, but you don't need to run the buffer very fast. You know, I'm not even sure the RPM, but on this is a Makita buffer, and it's set at like number 2 on the dial. I'm not sure what that is, 500, 600, 800 RPM, something like that. But the point is, you don't need to hear that thing screaming. It doesn't need to run very fast, and you know, you want the compound and the buffing pad to do the work. You don't really need to really lean on it hard or push too hard on it. Just let the compound do the work and do what it's designed to do. You want to keep the buffer moving. You don't want to sit in one spot for too long. On paint jobs that are hardened up or factory finishes, you know, you're just looking to polish it up quick, you don't need to be quite as concerned about burning. I mean, you always got to watch your edges, because you could burn, doesn't matter if it's fresh or old paint, you can burn an edge like nothing. But, you know, a harder finish or an older finish as opposed to a fresh finish, there's a big difference. You know, fresh finish is pretty soft still. It's still got plenty of time to go before it's completely aired out and cured and all the solvents completely come out of there. So it's still fairly soft. I mean, it'll be hard, but, you know, there's material in there that still needs to come out and solvents that need to still come out. So, you know, you just want to keep that buffer moving, especially on fresh clear and fresh finishes. But in general, you want to keep the buffer moving. You don't want to get running the buffer and moving it way too slow or over one area for way too long, because you will find yourself burning the paint. And then in the case of whether it's fresh clear in the shop or whatever, if you burn that, there's no way around it. You're going to have to repaint or respray or do a spot blend, something. Therefore, adding more time to the job and a loss of profit and a loss of labor, which could be dedicated to other jobs. So keep that buffer moving. Don't run it too fast, and keep an eye on what you're doing. You can always put your hand on the panel to feel how warm it's getting. You don't want to feel it getting too warm. It shouldn't be getting very warm. You got some friction going with the buffer on the panel, so you know you might feel it heat up a little bit, but it shouldn't be feeling hot, and the buffer shouldn't be running very quickly. So I just wrapped up the compounding phase. I went over it a little bit more than maybe usual, but again, it's because it's black. I just want to make sure I get all the marks out right away the first time. So I'm going to go over this now with the foam pad, and I'm going to follow it up with the swirl remover, again from Menzerna. And this stuff is great. So it's crucial to use this, you know, on a darker color or black especially. If I had pulled this car out in the outside or in the sun or even under the shop lights, you might be able to see. You're going to see the buffing marks from the compound. So it's absolutely important to go over the compound with a good polish. And like I said, I'm using the Menzerna, so I'm going to follow it up with that system. And this is going to smooth everything out even further, eliminate any fine swirl marks or anything like that. And it's going to leave it with a really deep gloss finish. And, you know, I'm going to be very pleased with this once I'm done. So I think I might even slow the buffer down a tad bit more when I'm running the polish. You know, that's how I do it. I'm not exactly sure the recommendation from Menzerna on that. But I'm using the waffle pad. So that's the foam pad. It's not a flat pad. It almost looks like an egg crate design to it. And you know, the flat foam pads work fine. The waffle pads work fine. Whatever you like to use. I like the waffle pad design. I don't know, it works well. So, but you want to make sure you're using the black foam pad with the polish. That's what it's meant for, and that's the best way to use it, so it works excellent that way. So with this stuff, it's not as aggressive as the compound. You know, you still got to watch your edges. You still want to run the buffing pad off the edge, not into it. You still want to keep it moving. But instead of looking at the areas that I had wet sanded now, I'm more or less looking over the entire panel to make sure I don't leave any swirl marks. You know, if you've ever seen a car out in the sun, it looks like it's got little tornadoes in the paint or just marks all over it. And you can tell it's a dead giveaway the car was buffed or might have had work done to it. And, you know, it's really easy to spot if you're looking. You know, so you want to get those swirls out. You want to knock all those marks out and leave the panel or panels or the entire car swirl free and clean. So I'm getting pretty close to wrapping this up here. Just something I thought of. I probably have even done it when I first started. I'm sure I have. Everybody has at some point. But, you know, you don't want to load it up too much with compound. I've seen guys get that buffer screaming. And slinging compound all. It's on the ceiling of the shop. It's on the windshield. It's all over their clothes. It's everywhere. And you want to work that compound in a little bit before you turn that buffer up and you get that thing, up to the speed you're buffing at. Don't just start that buffer and then just start running over globs of compound or polish, because you're going to be flinging stuff everywhere and you're going to have a mess on your hands. So, make your life easier. Make the detailer's life easier, or whoever's washing the cars. Just make everybody's life easier. Work that compound in a little bit before you start that buffer. And trust me, it'll make a huge difference. Looking over this, you don't see much compound anywhere, if at all, from what I just did here. And, trust me, I've had plenty of practice buffing and polishing, so, but you want to avoid that. You do not want compound everywhere. And right now, so I'm using a microfiber cloth, wiping it over, getting all the excess residue or any of the compound or polish left over. You want to get all that off and then give it a really good look. That's how you tell if you're done. And, I've paid some closer attention to the gap in between the fender and the bumper, made sure I got any polish or compound out of there. Opened up the door to get in there. Where the mirror and the trim go there, you just want to make sure you get any leftover compound. That's another dead giveaway that something was done to the vehicle. So if it's in the jams or wherever, you got to get it out. It'll turn white and dry up really hard, and it becomes a little bit more difficult to get off if you leave it on there, especially in the summer months. So just be thorough and get it all off the first time. That way when you send your work, it looks professional, and you feel good about it because it looks good. So I think that's pretty much it. I think I'm pretty much done with that. Looking it over, yeah, time to take that tape off. You look at the molding or the trim right there, that's just plastic trim textured. There's no compound on there. There's no buff marks. There's nothing. And, that's how you want it. Eliminate any evidence that you did anything on this car. Leave it looking factory. So we'll take a little bit of a closer look at this. And that's got that really nice, deep, glossy shine. Looks really, really nice. And here's a couple photos outside, and that's it. It's pretty easy, guys.